Hey you, and welcome. In this video we will talk about conditional rendering in React. So let's dive right into it. What I want to do with my code right now, I'm in the app.tsx component, and I want to make it so that we can press the something button, and when you press it, something shows up underneath it. Like a paragraph, could be hero, could be a whole new component that we create, but something underneath it shows. Let's just take away else button. I will put these paragraphs under the button. They don't really have to be under, just visually it looks a little bit more like something that I would change. So what I want to do is there's two paragraphs. When I press on something, the first paragraph should show up, which is in black right now. And if I press on button something again, then the red one shows up, black one disappears. So I'm showing one or the other when the toggle happens. So how do we do that? Well, we have to put all that we have learned so far about props and expand on that. We also learned a little bit about events using onClick event in the previous video. We will need to expand on that as well. And we also need to use state to create a state on a global level. So let me show you what I mean. On the button, when I press it, the toggle happens. It has a local state, but I do want that state to be written on a global level. So there's two ways to do it, right? Either I start using use state right here, and notice what I'm doing here. I'm instead of importing from React before, like I did, I could do that and I can start using it. Instead of doing that, I'm just going to start writing use state, and notice that VS Code is helping me out by saying, do you want to bring in use state from React library? In this case, yes, I do. Press enter. And it would just auto import that for me. If this functionality is not working for you out of the box, you may need an extension. I'll go to my extensions section in VS Code, and there is a auto import extension, this one, and you can use that. Let me hide that. You can use this extension, install that, and that may work better for you. But I believe VS Code has it built in. All right, enough about that. Let me close this out, Command W. And use state. So I'm using use state up top in app.tsx. I can set this default to false, and I can say is toggled, set is toggled, and I can pass is toggled to button like so. And then button, if I go to jump to or go to definition for button, I can see, okay, it's not letting me do that. Here. Okay, so if I go to definition for button.tsx, I can accept is toggled as a prop and then pass it down and take away state. So that means the component is no longer stateful. That's one way to do it, right? And valid way to do it. There's no right or wrong way. I just want to show you a different way that you may see as a pattern. So I'm going to use a callback function. I'll close out of this, go to app.tsx, and I will have a is toggled, set is toggled state still in app.tsx. We do need that, and I want this to be changed every time the button is clicked. So instead of me passing it a boolean type or a string type or object type, I'm going to pass a function to it. So let's first create our function. This function has to be within the function that is the app component. It has to be within. You cannot just create it outside and pass it down. I mean, that may be possible, but you're getting outside of the life cycle of React component. We want to stay inside the life cycle. In case the state changes, your function should change accordingly, right? So that's why we're inside the function component, the app component, and I will start a new function called handle toggle equals to anonymous function or arrow function. Start the curlies. And whenever this gets called, is toggled should be set to something, and we don't know what that is yet. And what I will say is when handle toggle is called, whoever calls it, they should pass me the value, which would be a type of boolean. So colon boolean means type of boolean, and this is the value, which is the actual value being passed down. And then I can set toggle to that value. So I don't have to assume what the value may be. I don't have to use as toggle and invert it. That's being done somewhere else. I'm just going to expect whoever calls handle toggle to pass me the new value. That way they're both in sync. Great. Now I can pass this down to button. And I can call it whatever. I can say callback, or I can say on click, right? So they work just fine. I will call it onClick. It does sound good because we are using the onClick event on the button. So if I save this for now, I'll go back to my button component. Notice that I am using onClick on line number 12 and I am using onClick on the app.tsx, but they both work differently. Right now, onClick on button is using the React event, but my onClick, the custom onClick that I've created, needs to be written down in the interface as onClick, which would be a function void. So this is how we write functions in TypeScript. They would just be parentheses, arrow function, and void, meaning you're not returning anything. If you're returning something, then you have to say boolean, string, so on and so forth. But in this case, it's just void, nothing else to work with. And we are going to pass it a value of boolean, right? This is also that IntelliSense works for us. This is not functional yet. We're not writing the functionality yet. We're writing documentation for the functionality. So this is just documentation for it. Save that. All right, next thing would be, so the error went away. Reason for that is because TypeScript is not complaining anymore. It's not functional yet. And I will destructure onClick from here in the component. And notice that it's a yellow color. Yellow is mostly for functions, and blue in my theme is for parameters that are just object type, object type, array type, string, boolean, so on and so forth. All right, so onClick, I can call this now. And the way to do that is in the onClick, I can just start curlies right after the arrow function. So that's one way to do it. Or let's expand on what we did before in the app.tsx and create handle click. That's usually the convention I follow, is that on something, on click, on submit, on something will trigger the event, whereas handle submit, handle click will do the business logic for me that would be only written by the developer, right? So how are we gonna handle that event versus when the event is triggered? All right, so handle click, I will take the set is toggled, copy that over to handle click, and also after the set is toggled is called, I will say on click should be called, which is passed down as props, call that, and pass it the new value, which in this case now it's a little confusing because is toggled by the time onClick got called may be different. So I will start a new variable inside the function, call it new value, assign that to is toggled negative, so not is toggled, use the new value to set the is toggled, and also pass it to onClick. Perfect. So this way my new value should be consistent to both set is toggled and onClick callback function. I will use handle click, and instead of using onClick arrow function, delete all of that, and in the curlies I'll just pass the reference to handle click. Remember, I'm not calling it. I'm not saying handle click call the function and then something. I'm passing in the reference. That means when onClick happens, take this function and just call it for me, and I will trigger this business logic where I will set a new toggled value and pass it to two different areas, one to my local state and the other one to the callback function. All right, saving that. And if I go back to app.tsx, no error should appear. Is toggle is there. Now nothing should really change because I'm not really doing any conditional rendering just yet. The toggle should still work for the something, so that's great. Now for the conditional rendering. There's a few ways to do it, right? Either we can pass paragraph a is hidden prop, and that can be set to true. So when it's true, hide yourself. When it's not true, unhide yourself. That's one way to do it. Or the other way would be using the ternary operator, which is more common. Of course, there are other libraries out there that you can use where you can just work with JSX, but I'm not going to work with that. I'm going to work with the most common practice here, which is ternary operator. So how do we do that? Inside the inside the app.tsx component, I will add a line under line 14 under the button and start a curly braces. So now I'm going to JavaScript in JSX, and I will use is toggled as a boolean, start a ternary operator. If is toggled, I will do parentheses and parentheses. So far my syntax is done. Now I have to pass something when these things happen. And usually the question mark would be on the next line, colon would be on the line after, and then in these parentheses I will pass a JSX element. In this case, paragraph would be 1. Let me clean this up. and the paragraph 2 would be the next one. Clean that up, and I will delete the line 20 and 21. They're no longer necessary. So hello world and hello earth are in their respective areas. Save that, and notice what happens in the browser. One of them disappears, and the reason for that is because conditional rendering is now working. So if I click on something, hello world should show, of course black background, so we don't really see anything. But if I press it again, hello earth, so on and so forth. So you could treat it as almost as a navigation thing, where you can, clicking on a button takes you to a certain area. You can use it like that. Navigation in React works similarly to what I just explained, but this is what a conditional rendering pattern would look like. I'll see you all in the next video.